Hello, nice to see you. Thanks very much for your time today, for signing up for the Curators tour of Extracting Us. My name's Persephone and I'm a co-director at Onca, which is the gallery in Brighton that Ilona and the other co-curators of the exhibition have been collaborating with to get this online collection out into the world. And I'm really happy to see it and to be here today with you and Ilona to explore the site. Also present are a number of other contributing artists and academics and activists who will be happy to talk with you and answer questions later on in this session. We've just got an hour together today, so I'll give you a little run through of what to expect. Yeah, so a little intro from me, and then a tour of the website itself from Ilona Hoover, who designed and built it, who knows all of the works pretty intimately and will be able to introduce you better to the contributors who are here today. After Ilona's shown us around the site by sharing her screen, you can ask questions, and I think what I would like you to do is to type your questions please into the chat box initially. That's kind of what I'm proposing for now, and I'll read them out and then the relevant people can respond. So yeah, and that's it, and we'll just hang around till 3, and yeah, I hope some of you brought cups of tea and snacks in the spirit of a launch event. So it really is something to celebrate, because the Extracting Us exhibition, this Extracting Us exhibition was meant to take place back in June at the Pollen Conference at Brighton University, which had to be cancelled due to the coronavirus pandemic. But the co-curators and the had such a huge amount of interest, and so much kind of, it's such an important area of work and research, creative responses and creative activism with people, with and by people experiencing extractivism and living at the front lines of corporate and state extractivism, that the show had to go on. So Ilona and her colleagues have worked together to turn what was going to be a physical exhibition in Brighton into quite a vast, emergent, evolving world for you to explore. I'm going to just refer to my notes now. There are works from over a dozen countries and many more than a dozen artists and curators, and they are being shared. They're being shown. The curatorial approach has been to make the connections between the works and the regions, the threats and the responses. So Ilona's going to talk you through them. It's worth knowing that you're welcome to come back to the website repeatedly over the summer, because more works will be made visible and shared, and more responses, like for example the one that you're going to hear from Mai today will be being shared on the website, and you're invited as well. If anyone's inspired to respond or write a blog post or a creative response, that's an open invitation from the curators. And yeah, so the website will be evolving until the weekend of the week of September the 22nd, when there'll be a closing event like this, and then after that we're hoping that this website will be a very useful resource for researchers and artists wanting to find out who's doing what in terms of this very important activist work. I just need to say a little bit about the people who've been involved in this collaboration. Alongside Onca Gallery, there's the University of Brighton's Centre for Social and Environmental Justice and Politics. I think I've said that wrong, haven't I? It's CSEP. And there's also, sorry, I'm going to go back to my notes because there's some very long acronyms. Yeah, the Centre for Spatial, Environmental and Cultural Politics at Uni of Brighton. And then there's the WeGo network, and WeGo stands for the Wellbeing, Ecology, Gender and Community Research Network, which is a PhD research network funded by into feminist political ecologies, and it's funded by Marie Curie. And also in collaboration on this project is another large international research project called Atmospheres of Violence, which is looking at the experiences of environmental defenders living at the front lines of extraction. So I think I've probably said enough. So happy to see you. I'm going to hand over to the marvelous human that is Ilona Hoover, who's the designer and builder of the website, to give you the tour. Thanks, Ilona.
Thank you. Thanks, Persephone. And I'm trying to, here we go. Yeah, thanks so much, Persephone, for that introduction. And I want to make sure I welcome everyone who's here, who's been contributing to the building of this website into the conversation in a bit. But first, just as I guess as we're trying to emulate a exhibition launch that could have been held in a physical space, and so I'm just going to talk you through a little bit of the website, and just to mention the curatorial team we have today with us, also Alice Owen and Siti Maimuna and Diane Nikowati. Rebecca Elmhurst, who's also been part of this, isn't able to join us, but that's for now. So I'm going to share my screen, and here we go. That should, can anyone do a thumbs up to say that worked? Yeah, okay, great.
All good.
Thank you. So we've built this on a WordPress kind of open source approach, and kind of in line with the approach of the Curatorial Collective, trying to make it quite accessible and not really heavy in terms of technology, so that can be accessed in different places and hopefully with kind of lower connectivity as well. So we've called this the online exhibition conversation because one thing that the online space allowed us to do is really to try to create that space that Persephone mentioned. So we have the exhibition element, which is through the contributors and the artist activists who are part of the exhibition, and the conversation element, which we have some, like a feed, if you like, coming up on the front page of the website. And so there's one that Mai just shared with us today, which she'll talk us through in a minute. And so that's just the front page with a bit more information about the partners that Persephone mentioned and the Curatorial Collective. And in the welcome section is just a bit of an overview of our approach and the background of the exhibition, and saying again how it will be evolving until the 26th of September. And the three main, I guess, strands or ways in which you can interact with it. So you can explore the contributors, so the work from artists, activists, researchers or collectives, and explore the connections, which is how the works intersects and maybe unusual juxtapositions, and then join the conversation. And there's a bit of a text as I say, outlining our approach. And then we've also posted a video that we made for Extraction Tracing the Veins conference that was hosted in early July, that gives a little bit of history as well, visually, like what Persephone mentioned, how it links to our collaboration with Onca Gallery. So that's in the welcome page, and if you click on Explore Contributors, it will go to the same page as the contributors above, and the idea here is to just have a tile for each of the contributors that are have their amazing work shared on here. And at the moment we have 6 that have gone live, as you will, and there will be a few more going live on the 17th of August and a few more on the 31st of August. So we've really tried to work with each of the materials of each contributor to do justice to them, and quite challenging in an online environment, but I really hope that you think, those of you here, that it's done justice to your work. So for example, Marilene, who is here, Marilene and the participants, her work in Brazil, so dead water. And so for each, there's the introduction image, and then there's a bit of text outlining the approach, which I really encourage you to read. This is really carefully crafted by everyone. And we've really also, one way in which we invite everyone to also engage with the exhibition is through this. We've invited everyone to share a little bit of additional information on how we might take action in relation to the issues and the struggles that are shared in the exhibition. So there's take action. Don't stop there. Continue to view. And for example, here is Marilene and her participants' work on some beautiful portraits and text accompanying them. So you can continue down and view more, and there's also this button here which hopefully helps you go back to the top. So yes, and hopefully it should be responsive and work on different. It might change the layout slightly, but will be responsive to different modes. So I'll just show one other example. Edgar Kaneko Shakriaba, who is part of the Atmospheres of Violence project, and we've also welcome putting different language versions if you like. We've tried to make it accessible. So Edgar's work, for example, also the description and an invitation to take action. And Edgar's work is photographies with a title without a description. So that just shows you some of the different outlines, and other contributors have videos. So for example, Vicenza, who is also here, same, the description and invitation to take action, and her work in the Sparans, and also video. So there's several audiovisual contributions as well, which we really invite you to see. So going back to the 3 strands, there's also exploring the connections. So as I mentioned, these we really want to give space to the contributors and for people to come back and view as things come live. And then what we want to do is bring some of their work into conversation. So that's kind of in progress, but we have these 6 themes that we're working with that we think can offer kind of some contrasting perspectives on the different works. So around questions of care, agency, and how people take action, perhaps on different towards different types of actions, and how we might value everyday actions or more political ones, different temporalities that people are working in, and different scales, different modes of engagement, and I showed some photography through ethnographic work and audiovisual work, and there's really a range of different and some images, more work with objects. So there's really a range of different ways of approaching engagement with these challenging issues, and then questions of intergenerational collaboration or concern and support. So those are the themes that we're working with and really looking forward to starting to connect. And finally, so we went through the contributors, the connections, and inviting you to join the conversation. So this is, if you like, the blog page. So there's, this is where we'll keep updating when as people respond to the content and the works on the website. So there's some details here of how you can do that and what we'd like you to send. And so I think that's a quick tour, hopefully that's useful for everyone. And to explain a bit more the conversations, I'd like to pass on to Mai now, who's been working with some networks in Indonesia on this. So yeah, over to Mai.
Yes, hi everyone, thank you, Ilona. So the idea of conversation is, the first is because we cannot like meet directly. So first is we invite all the visitors to invite public to participate to the exhibition, have dialogue with us, give response by send us their personal or community experiences relate to the exhibition materials, how the works resonate with the context you are living or feeling or sense. Some of it we deliberately have collaboration with the Women in Action on Mining in Asia, WAMA network, which is the network from NGOs who work with the community affected by extractive, especially mining, from Indonesia, Philippines, Mongolia, India, and Cambodia. So they will give response with the various way. It will part of how we then have enriching the conversation or imagination, even unpacking conversation about the extractives. And also thank you for East Kalimantan Thursday Action, Aksi Kamisan, which is also here. Their contribution on they give response to the Negar photos, Hi Negar, about the gender equal struggle at the margins, men, women, and children, minors. So this is, Aksi Kamisan is the action group, which is every Thursday they have action in the front of the governor office and have performance, youth, and kind of that. This is one of their songs that we hope that we have, have conversation between the material of exhibition. So we originally is in Indonesian, we translating in English. So we also invite the also if someone can contribute in the context of translation and kind of that also. So we hope that by the contribution we can kind of find more enriching the meaning of the extracting us, but also maybe alternative idea to resist or encounter extractivism in the future. So yeah, we invite us to join them. Thank you, Elena.
Thanks, Mai. And just before I'll hand back over to Persephone to field the questions, but I just want to introduce you to the contributors who are here with us today. So we have Negar, who is here, Negar Elodie Besadi.
Hi.
and Maika Gulati. And we also have Sandro Simon. There. We have Marilene Ribeiro.
Hi, everyone.
And we have Vicenza Sirefise. I don't know if I said that right, sorry. And we also have Becky Eyre from the Tapestry Project. I think, yes, shout, unmute your mic if I've forgotten anyone, but I think that is who we have today. So we have, hopefully you'll be also happy to respond to some questions if anyone has questions for the contributors, artists as well. So now, yeah, over to Persephone and open the floor to questions. So yeah.
Thanks, Ilona. Well, I would love to hear, in a really informal way from any of the contributing artists who are here today in the spirit of a launch event. If any, Maika or Nagar or Zandra or Marilyn or Becky, if any of you would like to talk about your work, or what's that, Ilona?
I forgot to say that Siti Maimuna and Alice Owen are also part of the contributors as well.
So yeah, sorry, forgive me. Yeah, Siti Maimuna and Alice Owen are here too. I think it's a great chance for people to tell us a little bit about the projects that they've been exploring. If anyone would like to, would any of you like to talk to us all about your work, just in such a brief, just for a moment? Nagar, it looks like you might like to.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Great. I wonder if Ilona could share. Do you think Ilona should share screen so we can look at the work as you talk about it, Nagar?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, great. Is that all right, Ilona? Great, thank you.
Great. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Well, first, thank you very much, all of you, to put this together. It looks really great, and I'm very much looking forward to read more about the connections as well. I think it's a great thing to add to this exhibition. So my name is Nagar. I'm a lecturer in human geography at the University of Bristol. And the work that I'm showing here is based on ethnographic work that I've undertaken in Tajikistan in 2014-15. And so based on this work, I've presenting like several things, including like a series of photographs based on questions of shame, a short ethnographic film, as well as a short animation piece that I directed with an animation filmmaker. So just to give like a little bit of context to the ethnography, so I worked with female, male, and children miners in a coal extractive landscape in Tajikistan, where people were involved in informal mining and where a new Chinese mine had just set up, pushing the miners away. And I particularly worked on the gender division of labor and the experience of shame of female miners and a very embodied experience of mining, of people involved in mining in this village. So yeah, so the photos show the ambivalent experience of shame of women with a dimension of intergenerationality. And the animation piece that appears after, that is called Nadira, is a small animated ethnographic portrait on the story of one female miner in the village. And I really loved working with Kate Jessup, who's a fantastic animation filmmaker who really managed to put, shape and beauty to all the thoughts I had based on this experience of ethnography. And the film is based on footage that I've taken during my ethnographic experience there. And I worked with an animation, with a video editor to put it together. So it's still like a first a first kind of draft, the ethnographic film, and hopefully it will evolve as well. And this can be exhibited in the future. I think I'm going to stop here because I've already spoken quite a lot. But yeah, thanks again for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to see how it evolves.
Thank you, Nagar. That's great. That's really, really helpful to hear from you. Would anybody else like to talk about the work that's on the website? Give us a shout. Oh, and sorry, in addition, if any participants who are here to guests at the launch have questions for the contributors to the website, could you please type them into the chat and then we can ask them at the right moment. Anyone want to talk? Should I verbally invite someone? Okay. Alice or Becky, Alice Owen or Becky Eyre, would either of you like to talk about your projects?
Yes, I can say a little bit. That's fine.
Thanks, Alice.
Sure. Yeah. So mine's not up yet. That will be launched at the end of August, on the 31st, I think. Which is good, I think, because I'm still kind of, as I'm seeing everyone else's work, I'm also really inspired by the questions that other people are asking and wondering how they fit in with the questions that I'm asking as well. So that's very exciting. So my work is based around a case which is actually really near to Brighton and where the Onca Gallery is, which is called Horse Hill, and that's an oil production site in Surrey, using techniques potentially very similar to fracking, and there's a lot of controversy around it. And so this work has really, it kind of started with my, my PhD started last year, and I was learning about all these kind of really grand scale concepts. So things like the Anthropocene, which is this idea that humans are having an impact on the actual geology of Earth. And one of the ways that that's being done is climate change and fossil fuel extraction and combustion. And then these big kind of conceptual ideas, a lot of those to do with feminist political ecology, so like extractivism, and also kind of ideas like community and care, and kind of not really understanding the connection between these really kind of extractive moments and places and these really kind of hopeful ideas that are coming through. So I had all these kind of concepts in mind, and then I began my kind of ethnographic research at Horse Hill. So that was very much kind of joining in with the little bits of activism going on, which has been quite difficult because there's been a legal injunction there, which basically criminalizes any kind of protest, really, which has really had a chilling effect on a lot of the community there. And also it's just been very unspectacular because it's Surrey, it's this beautiful green leafy part of England. A lot of the drilling is going on, you know, underground. It's not being combusted there. It's all kind of happening out of sight and out of mind. So that was kind of surprising for me. And then there was another encounter I had with, so at the time she was also a student at the University of Brighton, studying ceramics, and she was doing a project with the clay taken from near the Horse Hill site. And she'd done all these experiments and found out that it was possible to make things with the clay and do some kind of community workshops. And for me, that kind of brought together in this really kind of active and hands-on way how to kind of engage with the materiality of these problems of Anthropocene, and kind of how to make visible these really invisible or hard to perceive problems that are kind of detached from the settings. So that's kind of what my work's going to be engaging with. So on the one hand, really like foregrounding the efforts of the community and how important that's been to make a scene where there isn't necessarily something obvious going on. So there has been a lot of active protest and that kind of thing. So I've got a few photos that kind of show the continuity and the persistence of action there over the many years that this has been going on, by many different groups, so local community groups, anti-fracking groups, more recently Extinction Rebellion groups, and kind of exploring that through the ages. And then there's also some pieces that engage with the kind of geological materialities and with the clay as well, and how, like this picture shows, how that can kind of be a way of thinking with the community about what exactly it means to be extracting during the Anthropocene, and to ask really, are there better ways of engaging with the very same land that isn't extractive? Yeah, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Alice. That's it's super fascinating, and it brings up all sorts of questions. So I'm going to be ready to jump in with questions after this if others haven't got any yet, but I'm sure they will. I noticed actually that there was a little a comment in the chat box which was aimed at Marilyn, and I'm just wondering about Marilyn, would you like to talk about dead water?
Yeah.
Thank you. It'd be great to hear from you.
I'm gonna try to be like brief.
Great.
Then
thank you.
everyone else. Dead water, actually, I started as a work that tackles the hydropower schemes in Brazil. But actually, I wanted to talk about hydropower in general, overall, all around the world, because I've noticed that throughout this research and before it as well, before it started, I noticed that the same kind of pattern would happen all around the world, regardless of the physical space or the geographical place. The hydropower schemes would take place. And then when I started studying about it, and when I started like having kind of access to the information about the hydropower schemes and how they developed it, and the reasons for them to be there and to take place, I noticed that most of them, especially in the Amazon region, were related to the mining industry. Then basically it comes to the point that the mining industry with land as well. Then ever since I have talked to people in Ecuador and in Peru, for instance, and I've noticed from that testimonials as well, that in Ecuador and Peru, the same happens. I mean, the mining industry, which is quite strong in these countries, by the way. I think most of you might have know about this already, but in case you don't know, I would like to inform you about this. That is quite a strong thing in both Ecuador and Peru. And as it's been happening in Brazil as well, these hydropower schemes, they happen based on the necessities of the mining industry in these sites. And as like the mining industry and like the mining, the pits and everything, hydropower schemes, they have a big impact locally in both environment and on people who live on these sites. Generally, these comprise like traditional communities, riverside dwellers, or indigenous communities that live along the rivers, and they have been living along the rivers for generations. And of course, like, and then what I notice is like all the process of the hydropower plants or the hydropower plans by the governments, they follow sort of the same path of the mining plans for these specific sites. And I'm talking about even when they conceive them, the way they take them, they put them in the pipeline and the legislation and how they happen, and especially regarding the consultation of the local communities for their approval. And I would like just to add, and then I developed this project along with the communities that have been affected by this endeavors. And then this, it's basically a testimonial, a visual and textual testimonial of these people in the way they wanted to be looked at and the way they wanted to speak about the subject that have impacted their lives quite a lot since it was announced in the area. And it's important just to say, like mining plans and mining schemes, the project, it starts impacting the area even before it starts to be built, the hydropower plant and the dam in the area. From the point it's announced and it starts to impact the area, and it carries on and it carries on. Just to then I hope you had time to read the text, as Alona, brilliant. Thank you, Alona, for saying this, because the text adds a lot to the image for you to understand better how I worked with these people and how we together stitched these stories. And if you have time as well, there is a film which is called Costs that is also featured in the online exhibition at ONCA, which is kind of it's also about the impacts of hydropower, and you can check it out on Vimeo if you want. And it talks a bit more about how the impacts are really sometimes covered up or veiled by this propaganda of hydropower as a very green energy and sustainable energy source. And I think I talked a lot already. Then I'm gonna leave for you for the questions and for all the other participants and all the artists to talk a bit about their own work.
Thanks so much, Marilyn. How about Micah or Zandro?
Okay.
Micah?
Okay, it's me. Well, thank you, and thank you for all these possibilities actually to have this conversation. I was even wondering if maybe next, when all the works will be ready, if we can have another conversation, maybe all together. At least we have the time to watch all the videos and, you know, to digest our works and maybe to have new elaborations together and maybe networking and developing new ideas for the future. So this is just a comment. Well, and for me, so, okay, it's Micah. I'm an anthropologist, and actually I'm not working directly to any kind of environmental problem. I am a visual anthropologist, and I started this work during my PhD. And it's true that every time I was, I mean, I'm a photographer as well, so I use the visuality as the object of my studies, and of course even as the tool in order to make my doctorate. And during this, I mean, during the back and forth after my Viva, I shared some of these photos actually with the artistic communities in Trinidad, who proposed me. First of all, they were the first that actually, that's why I would love to share the project much more than the object of this work. So it's the idea that they just let me notice that unconsciously I was referring to some of the colonial paintings actually of the landscapes of the time. And for that reason, I started to study the colonial landscapes and not just reading them for all my research, as everybody should do, usually working on other countries than their own. And from that moment, I started even to recognize I started to question to myself the kind of introspective work in order to understand which was the kind of fascination that I had to the peculiarity of the country, which was exactly the extracting oil and gas production of the country, which is literally cohabiting with the landscapes and the life of people. There are environmental problems. For now, they are not, of course, there is, has all countries with usually oil and gas production and corruptions in order to even unveil or cover the issues. But what was more interesting for me, it was this industrial presence, which is completely overwhelming the daily life of people. And when I was showing with my little iPad the beginning of this work, to not just all friends that actually accompanied me for all these years of PhD, but even to all the people that helped me for my thesis, because I came back in order to give my work while showing my new ideas, visual ideas, which are these photos that you see. It was very interesting because they were kind of we started kind of naturally to discuss about what they were seeing and what I was seeing and what they can see through my gaze in order to question what they would love to see in the country. So actually the main topic of this work that I try to explain even verbally with a little descriptions on the sides is really what came out, is a kind of bottom-up process. They came out through the discussions with them and with some of the people and friends on the island of Trinidad. And from the moment then I started to so to study more the landscaping, the colonial landscaping, the post-colonial, post-independent landscaping as well. And it came out with these artistic communities who I'm still working with, that there is a kind of a national construction of what should be the land that should be represented nationally and internationally. And of course, the oil and gas production is completely invisibilized in the representation of the lands and the waters. And on the contrary, when we are on sites, is constantly present. So there is this kind of visibility and invisibility that is playing through the, of course, economic power, because I mean, it's the main power and its main economic income of the country as well. And so this is a project that it came out then, okay, of course, from a kind of intellectual, so top down, and even imaging and visual game, let's say, with the community, but not just. So it was much more a kind of collaboration in terms of interpretation and inspirations for this work. And so I didn't want to go directly to the environmental critique, but I wanted to go in directly to the issue, trying to question with the people who were looking at with me these images, what do we want to see about this country and what do you want to show about it, and everything. In order to finish that last minute of sharing, I tried to share, I proposed this project to one of the residency who actually is much more connected to the community sense instead of international, has the first one that I was much more linked with. And we decided to make an event in order to have a common debate with the community and the other little cities, so other communities around at the day of the independence, in order to see together through these images, which are just examples of what could be a different landscape of their own country. How do they want to see their own country for the future and for the future generations, and how actually the oil and gas production can be conceived on a responsible and, first of all, on an acknowledgement of the oil and gas production, and how can be conceived for a better sustainable future of the country. So.
Thank you. That's great. Amazing. I'm just looking at the time, but I don't know, Ilona, perhaps we could just talk momentarily. It's just after 2:45. I think it would be lovely if possible to hear from Xandro, Mai and Becky, if they all want to say anything, but maybe just to sort of say, because we haven't had many questions yet. Would that be possible, Xandro, Mai and Becky, if you'd like to just tell us for a couple of minutes each about the work that you've done? So I'll start with Xandro.
Yeah, hi everyone, thanks for having me. My work isn't up yet, so I'll keep it very short. I see some connections to what you do, Maika. I'm very fond of your work also. So I do research, I'm an anthropologist, I do research in Senegal, and I do mainly research. Now you see a picture and of a palm oil canister and a wall and shells, and I'm mainly interested in shells and mollusks. So the canisters are sort of a side thing, but I came across them here and there. They're very present, and I started to think about the materialities they inherit, or the stories they inherit. And so it's petrol and it's palm oil. And so in my work, I will also do a sort of a juxtaposition, or sort of an irritation or a collage, but more in an audiovisual sense. You will see, I think, from next Monday on, several audiovisual loops where you see some of these canisters, how they are used. I just went down to the cellar and I found another one. So when they are cut, they're used for all different things, and they're also very important in the processing of shells. as sieves, you will see from next week on. So exactly, there will be audiovisual loops where you will hear some things about the journeys of the oil, the petrol and the palm oil, and some imagery of the different re-articulations, reformulations, how people use those canisters in their everyday practices. I think that's the short version.
Perfect, thank you. So everyone should come back after the 17th if they want to look at your work properly.
Can I continue, Percy?
Yes, go.
Feels time, yeah, okay. So this is my collaboration with Abdullah Naim. I think his name is here. It's about, well, the title is Balian. Balian is actually a shaman. They can be men or women, or both. So it's my work is in island called Kalimantan, Borneo. Sometimes they call it because it's part of Malaysia also, but mainly my work is part on Indonesia. My background is activist. Now I'm doing my PhD research, part of Alice network called WEGO. Actually, the Balian, the shaman is help on healing, but also like accompanying ritual to accompanying died people go to in the different journey before in heaven. So they live in the island that's heavy extracted by various of extractive project, logging, mining, various of mining kind of that. So in the way that we need to show the contrasting also how the Balian situation, the politics that depend on the economy, that depend on the extractive project, the way how the extractive work, which is Balian existence, is depend on their environments. Like for example, for the ritual, they need several of plants, even like hundreds plants kind of that. But then extractive project and also the degradation of landscape and also appropriation the knowledge because some of them cannot exist because modern medicines kind of that. So it's kind of showing how the silencing of Balian's existence, non-human existence together by extractives. That mainly the idea of the Balians that not present yet, I think. Yeah, that's the general ideas.
Thanks, Mai. I'm sorry to rush you. It's a bit painful. Sorry. I've just realised. So look, it's shortly before 3, and just had a little texty chat with Ilona. It would be really, I would really like it if all of the artists who are here could speak for a couple of minutes each, and that would take up. That means we've still got to hear from Becky, if you like, and also Vicenza. I'm so sorry that I left you out from the list, Vicenza. And so what I was thinking was, there's just been 2 or 3 questions in the chat. What I propose is that we close the kind of talks part of our launch, close the formal launch at 3 as agreed, and then anyone who'd like to hang around for another 10 minutes or so to address the questions that we've had in the chat, there's currently 2, just to hang on. So that's what I'm proposing we'll do. Also, just to say the conversation, as Micah suggested, this is an opening event, and then we'll have a closing event in 6 weeks or so after people can come back after they've digested, seen, explored the website, and we can continue these conversations in a bit more depth, in a bit more of a participatory way then. So I shall hand to Becky.
Okay. So my hesitancy in speaking about this work is only in that it's not my work, and I'm here representing a research team called the Tapestry Collective, of which I work in communications on the research communication side. But the Tapestry project is we're looking at transformative alliances between various actors, local communities, NGOs, scientists, state agencies, research architects. We're looking at how transformative alliances occur between these actors seeking socially just and ecologically sound alternatives in 3 different areas of India and also Bangladesh. And the work in particular, I might just put a link in the chat to the website so people can see if they'd like. This work will be online from the 17th of August and onwards, but it's work that has been collected from a photo voice methodological exercise with our colleagues in Mumbai, and it looks at the coastal areas of Mumbai that are under a lot of pressure and development, and the destruction of the mangroves and the impact that's having on the livelihoods of the fishes, the Corley fishes communities in the area. So the work is all theirs, and the project itself is a year into its officially 3-year, but because of COVID, a lot of the work has been put on hold. But I would encourage you, anyone who is interested in visual methodologies in particular, and particularly participatory ones, and the politics that are involved in those, I'd encourage you to have a look at the work, and we'd love to engage in a discussion around those lines later on. I know I certainly would. But I feel like that's probably all I'm going to say.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Becky. That's perfect. Okay. Much appreciated. We'll hear more from you hopefully at the end of September. And last but not least then, Vincenza, are you there? And would you like to talk a little about your work?
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. And it's been great to hear all the other contributors. And thanks again for everyone who put together the great website. It's looking really well. Yeah, just very quickly, my work looks at the Sperrin mountain range in the north of Ireland. And right at the minute, a Canadian company is trying to open one of the biggest gold mines in Europe in this mountainous region in the north. I'm a PhD researcher at NUI Galway. And yeah, I'm right at the start of my process of doing the PhD. So I'm looking forward to dive deeper into the project in the next few years. But my contribution is basically using the idea of layering to show the sort of contrasting worldviews that can exist in the extractive zone. So I was really interested in the idea of geological survey maps as a tool of the state and corporations to sort of map areas as a resource to be exploited from and as a commodity, basically. And then the other relationships and different livelihoods and non-humans and humans that coexist in those areas, and kind of put them together just to show yeah, what is happening in there. It's not just a wilderness area where no one's living, and there's all these other life happening in that area. So yeah, this is, you can see the GPO, which is the site of resistance. They've occupied the area beside where the gold mine is going to be, and they've put the caravan in the trees as well to avoid eviction. And then as well, I've layered some Irish text over the images and there's a video as well. And yeah, the Irish language as well is especially significant in this area because it's one of the last Irish-speaking areas of Northern Ireland as well. So there's a lot of like colonial legacies as well in this region of Ireland, which I was hoping to get across in the work. But yeah, I'm pleased if you can to sign an objection letter to the project. The link is in the Take Action section, and it would be great. You can do it from anywhere in the world, and it would be really helpful to the community there. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Ilona, were you going to, am I closing, Ilona? I'm just going to close for now.
Yes.
Yeah, so I've actually just had my mind blown, and I think judging by the fact that everybody who signed up at the start of this event is still here, I think we've all sort of had our minds blown really. This is quite an extraordinary project, and I'm really humbled by the depth and the depth of the work and the breadth of the connections and the dedication of this collective to bringing these works together. And I really, really want to humbly thank Ilona Hoover, who's worked so tirelessly, supported by the collective, to showcase these really important works. So please, anyone, I hope that anyone and everyone's going to really dive into this website, watch the AV, enjoy the AV, read all of the text, and most importantly, pay attention to the take action, the calls to action. There's so many more questions that I think that we'll build on at our event on September the 22nd. We've only just confirmed that day and time. It's September the 22nd, and it will be at 2 p.m. again, to enable people from in different time zones to participate. So we have had a few questions. Oh yes, sorry. Oh yeah, Ilona's just flagging that this website is emergent, and feedback is very much welcomed. So if you have any issues navigating it, then please do email. And again, as Mai mentioned, if you have thoughts or would like to contribute to the conversation, then that's a live invitation to anyone to become a part of this ongoing reflective journey together. So I think I'd like to thank you all for coming, and then just if the artists would be happy to stay, and anyone else is curious to stay, I think that Mike and Rico have asked questions, and so did Ruth, which we haven't had time to address yet. So if anybody would like to stay and have a bit more of a chinwag, then Ilona and myself and anyone, and hopefully some of the artists will stay too. But thanks for coming. So.
Yeah, thank you,
everyone. Good. Yeah, thank you. So I'll take the questions in order then, if that's all right. Yeah, and I think I know the answer to I know an answer to the first question, which was from Ruth Gard, who was asking if any of the artists here exhibiting here face risks. The risks of risk by doing this work in the same way that other activists and environmental defenders face. Yeah, would anybody like to say anything about that? It's a false dichotomy between the artist and the activist. I think that's the first thing to say. A lot of the artists are activists, or the art is a form of activism, and some of the artists, I'm not sure exactly how many of them, but some of them are living in communities that are living permanently in communities every day that are at the front lines. So Siti Maimouna is an artist activist who's based in Kalimantan. Or I think most of them. Ilona, probably, would you just like to answer this question?
Yeah, I'll try, but also, you know, we have work from Danilson Banewa and Edgar Kaneko, which I showed earlier on, and you know, they're part of the Atmospheres of Violence project, which is precisely looking at the experiences of frontline environmental defenders, and their work is using art as a form of activism. And we also have, you can see on the, in fact, on the conversation bit of the website, and also through Onca, you can find a recording of a webinar we did last month, which was about engaging on the front lines. And Edgar and Denilson, as well as another colleague of theirs from Brazil, Jaider, shared their experience of doing that. So we're going to be sharing the recording of that webinar is available on the blog, on the conversation page of the exhibition. So you're very welcome to view that. It's a very challenging webinar conversation, I must add. But yeah, I think that's something to add.
Thanks, Ilona. Anyone else have anything to say to Ruth? Okay, Ruth saying, well then, Ruth, does anybody want, Ruth saying that they didn't want to make a false dichotomy there, but
yeah, maybe quickly.
Does anybody want to add anything to what Ilona said?
Yeah, just very quickly, and I mentioned that I'm like probably not the most
then please.
Sorry. Oh yeah, sorry, there is a little bit of yeah, I'm probably not the most exposed of the artist activists who are participating here, but I know that from my point of view, because of like more visibility from like visual work and art-based work in comparison with research writing-based work, I've had issues in trying to go back to Tajikistan. And I have no idea of like whether it's because it's easier by Googling me to find actually all this information. But I think this is one of the issues, which is like more and more difficulty to go on site and actually talk to people. But I don't feel like particularly threatened at another level, but the continuation of the research might be at some point.
Can I add?
Am I?
Yeah, I think I have a similar experience with Negar, but in my case, because I'm part of the activist civil society movement in Indonesia, that's can also can mention like supporting system for the activists. So I think important thing in the context of our works and the research is also how you're not just doing research, but also part of the movement also. So it's and familiar. I mean, talk with the government and kind of that is also part of your research. You're not kind of hiding something. I think it's important also to present not just your work, but also the community voice. Yeah. And sorry, I think it's important to mention because that's why we have WAMA, the women in Asia, the network that we're supporting each other also in the context of our work. So in kind of solidarity things, I'm really happy that Ilona also put the, a call for action kind of that, so that then we can have connection by this exhibition. Thank you.
I think there's another question. I don't know where Persephone's gone. Ah, there's Percy. Yes. I'll let you continue, Percy.
Okay, sorry, I just disappeared. I'm really sorry, Maya. I missed most of what you said, but I'll just and I've actually lost my group chat because my internet went down. But just to reassure everyone that we will be sharing the transcript of the video and the transcript of the talks.
Do you want me to ask the other question?
Mike, it was Yeah, it was, I think Mike wanted to say something, and Rico had a question too.
Yeah. So it was RJ Chase, is it Rika? I don't know. I'm interested to know if the artists have much faith that their respective governments will address the environmental impacts of fracking, oil extraction, etc., or if the corporations have too much influence with politicians.
Shall I just have like a quick comment about this? I can tell about Brazil and most of, not most of Latin American countries because I don't have experience with all of them, but Brazil specifically. The mining industry and the mining companies, they've got a big lobby and when it comes to politics. Some of them, very powerful ones, they fund political parties in Brazil. Then that there we can see that it's a very strong link between politics and these industries, and that's why. And then as well as the construction companies, like the infrastructure construction engineer companies, as you might know already by like Odebrecht, the case that like struck some years ago. But then when it comes to Brazil, it's quite difficult for you to make things happen in these terms because they are really strongly linked, and the lobby is really, it's massive and it's quite difficult. And now specifically now they're really powerful as well, as you might know about the right-wing government we have currently in power.
Thanks, Marilene. There was another question. First, I wanted to ask whether, is it Mike, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah, I'm Mike from Latin America Bureau. We've worked with Marilene, and she authored the chapter we had on hydroelectric dams in Brazil and the threat to the Amazon. We're carrying on that work over the next couple of years with a new book called The Heart of Our Earth, about community resistance to mining in Latin America. And Lab's a print publisher. We've been publishing books since 1977. We've published about 170 books. But one of the delightful things about this exhibition and the work that all of you are doing is that it broadens the scope into a whole range of methods and media and ways of looking at things and speaking about them, which is much wider than just books. And I think we've got an enormous amount to learn from all of you, and certainly we'll try to do so. And conversely, if any of you are interested in Latin America and mining, in Canadian mining companies, I noticed, Vicenza, you have a homegrown problem in Northern Ireland. So I hope that we can collaborate with you on this. I wanted to throw out one idea which sort of came to me while you were talking. We recently published a story about a project to build a very large high voltage electric power line, actually across the Amazon River, connecting from areas north of the river to areas south of the river. And it's all tied up with development projects in the region, and it's tied up with a giant bauxite mine at a place called Oriximiná in Pará. And it's also linked to a hydroelectric dam project on the Trompetas River. But when you think about power lines, they're kind of a map, they're a network, and very often they're built in advance of the extractive projects that they will serve. The same story applies to roads, of course. In many countries, the roads don't go to places where people live, they go to places where stuff is extracted. And going back a century or more, the same was true of the railway network. If you look at the railways of Latin America, 2/3 of them were built to service mines and industry, not to bring people from A to B. So maps and networks like roads and railways and power lines are really important. And I just sort of was thinking about it in connection with this and envisaging some sort of giant project to map all this stuff. So if anyone has ideas or would like to join in, please contact Marilene or contact us at Latin America Bureau Lab. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so then maybe you have a contact you can also put in the chat for people. That would be helpful.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you. And we also have a question from Ashok. How do local community organizations, how are local community organizations involved in research, and particularly the fisher folk in India? So I guess, I don't know if Becky, you can respond to that, and maybe others.
I think that's the question that's at the center often of what the Tapestry project is interested in, is how transformations occur through alliances on the ground, and alliances of many different actors. So the Koli fisherfolk in India are at the center of the co-design of the research, because we're working with existing alliances and asking the questions of how we strengthen existing political alliances that are happening on the ground, particularly in terms of the livelihoods and the environmental situation on the coasts of Mumbai. But we're also working in the Sundarbans and in Kutch, working with local people in the same sort of ways. But specifically with Mumbai, we're working with a group of, they're called Bombay 61, and they're research architects who have been co-designing solutions for dealing with the environmental degradation of the coastlines with the Koli fishers, and also sorry, I feel a bit on the spot. We because I feel like that I'm also thinking about the question that came before about faith in change and government, because a lot of what we're looking to do is advocate as and build on advocacy that is existing in these areas, because the governments in Mumbai have an incentive to develop in these areas, and they have their own incentives, but we have been using photo voice specifically as a methodology for how local communities are involved in the research process, but also in the communication of that research, and also, so I'd probably say from the 17th of August that work will be on show, and that's one really strong example of in how they're involved in the research methodology. But there's also focus groups, and we've also participated in festivals, but the Koli fishers and what I think we're really interested in plural understandings of what transformation would even entail in these areas and on the ground, and they're very much local people are key to that. I'll stop speaking now, sorry.
I was wondering actually whether Marilene, you could share a bit more how you worked with participants, because it's quite striking that your contribution, Dead Waters, participants, and Marilene. So maybe you can say something about your approach to working with people.
Okay, my approach came like this due to two reasons. I mean, the first reason was that as a researcher and as an artist, I think it's worth mentioning that I hold like a master's in ecology. Then I know a bit about the environmental and social impacts of hydropower. But apart from these, I mean, despite of this knowledge, I also considered, and I always considered, that the knowledge from traditional communities, for the communities who have been affected by these ventures, they could contribute more than me, than myself, in saying the important things about the issue. And I really wanted them to say what was important and what was happening. And apart from this, I also thought that traditional ways of documenting contemporary issues, there was kind of an issue or a problematic point on this, because it was generally like the photographer or the artist go into an area, or the anthropologist, and this has been reported by anthropologists for a while now. But at the time I started my research back in 2014, this kind of discussion was started as well, about the way contemporary issues had been reported by photographers with just this sole view of the person behind the lens. Then I thought, okay, then I'm gonna tackle this issue, and I want these people to communicate the points that they consider important. But at the same time, I want myself to learn from them as well. And I want them to have the opportunity of engaging themselves in a photography-based project in the media itself. Then I started with that water. Then I proposed to them basically to join me and for us together to construct these photographs, to build these photographs, the portraits of themselves, not based on their own views, but based on our views together. Then portraits, they would happen after a conversation we'd had together, and these would take like generally 2 hours or sometimes a day, and I would spend days with them, with each one of them, for us to discuss about the issues that were important to them and the points they wanted to consider to the people who would have access to the work. And after these discussions and after this conversation, I would invite them to work on their own portraits. But instead of following this, it's quite interesting to have a photo voice methodology, which I have worked with as well in Brazil for other projects. I decided to go further, and I decided to work as a collaboration, as I could bring my skills as a photographer and their skills and their knowledge together. Then basically I operate the camera and they suggest what they wanted to do. And along the shoot, they see what is in the camera and they suggest the modifications, and they suggest why they wanted to add, how they want to change the thing, and how they want to change the frame, what they want to put in and to take out the frame, until they're happy with the result. And until they say, okay, this is what I want to show to the others, this is what I want to show to the viewers. And then we work together on this selection, and I ask them what they consider the most important parts of their discourses for us to add to the testimonials, to the pieces that I've put together. If you want to check, I think it's interesting to, if one of you have the chance to see that there's a book as well. It's called Dead Water, the book as well. It's been shortlisted for the R Photo Book Award last year. And it's also this year is going to be at the Descubrimientos of Foto España. It's been selected for Foto España as well. And I think it's quite important to have these recognition as well, because this is what they wanted, you know? And every time we've got this kind of thing happening, I text them personally for them to know that the voice, the message they wanted to be out, it's been out, and it's reaching places that they wanted to reach as well, places that are far from their reach in terms of being internationally heard. And I think this is part of the aim as well. And I think this was one of the reasons for them to take part in this project, because they were kind of, they wanted to be heard, and they had been silent for a long time, especially by the companies who operate and who are in charge of the hydropower plant project, because they say that they're going to listen to them, and in the end they just have them talking to them as a protocol. In the end, they don't take their voice further. And then that's what I think it's been quite successful in terms of their aims as well, because every time I text them via WhatsApp, those that I've got the WhatsApp, mentioning about the exhibition, about testimonials that I've got from viewers or from like people who attend these contests or these big events, or even conference that I go and I talk about the work and I talk about their experiences on these. Their response is really positive. They think like, oh, now we're achieving what we wanted, and this is great as well. About these testimonials about the results of the work, I think somehow it's achieving what they wanted and achieving their goals as well.
Thanks for that. I'm just aware of time. I don't know if there's any other questions or any other things that some of the contributors want to say. Otherwise, I think we can slowly say goodbye.